This morning, the topic that I want to speak to you is about breaking down dualism. Breaking down dualism. It's basically targeting or focusing on the word dualism or dualistic thinking. I'm sure most of us are familiar with this one, but I think it's good for us to remind us again or revisit this topic time and again, because we are very much prone to slip into this dualistic thinking time and again. Let me just give you an example from my life. Many years ago, before I got married, as I was looking for suitable life partners, okay, I was thinking, or let's say I was considering these ladies, and then in my mind I am thinking, because I was already a pastor in Bombay Baptist Church, so that made me more difficult, it seems. That's a dualistic thinking, okay? So I was thinking, unless my life partner is really committed to God, I cannot marry her. I'm putting her in the spot now, my wife. But I'm just talking about my dualistic thinking. It's nothing to do with Achui. She's a righteous person, period. So my thinking was that because I'm a pastor or so-called holy calling, if my wife is not committed to the Lord or strong commitment, how will she become the wife of a pastor? And I also didn't really consider about her profession. And for her case, she has been a government employee. So in terms of employment, she is much more stable than mine. Mine was just a pastor, right? I can go anywhere and it's not a permanent job, by the way. So, but then I was thinking that mine is higher than her calling, and hers is like a secondary and mine is like a primary. So you see the kind of thinking that I have. And I think many of the ladies, now young ladies before you're getting married, hello, may I have your attention please? Some of the ladies are also thinking, I do not want to marry any people who are into full-time ministries because that calls for a lot of commitment. But I'm okay with engineers, doctors, because I can sin sometimes without feeling guilty, because they are not expected to be as holy or as the other people who are called into the ministry. So dualistic thinking is playing here, that I can get away with sin if I marry any other person apart from those full-time workers. And that kind of gives you a license to slip into the sin again and again, because you are not that pastor's family, is it not? We are just ordinary Christian family. We can sin. Right? But no. Think about it. A young man or a young woman considering for a marriage and already planning to sin and live in sin before you get married, that will really help you to slip into sin again and again and live a life of sin and not a life of commitment. Whereas Jesus has clearly told us, take up your cross and follow me. And following Christ for anybody, for any disciples, it is not an easy road. It is a narrow road. And we all need to understand that irrespective of the profession of your spouse and your profession, we are all called for a full-time committed disciple of Jesus Christ. And in those days, because I don't have the proper understanding of a dualistic thinking, I will say, I cannot do that because I'm a pastor. I cannot go there because I'm a pastor. I cannot dress like this guy because I'm a pastor. Again, I'm thinking in a very wrong way. I cannot, or I am not doing because of my profession. And I think that's a very wrong thinking. I should be displaying the character of Jesus because I'm a Christ follower, because I'm a disciple of Jesus, and not because of my profession or not because of my calling. But I should be a disciple of Jesus displaying the beauty of Christ. So I'm not set apart because of my profession. I'm set apart because of my being a disciple of Jesus Christ. Is that okay for us? So you are being set apart in the workplace because you are a disciple of Jesus Christ. You are different from people because your value system is derived from the Bible. Okay? Now, I'm going to explain to us more about dualism. And it is interesting. When you understand this properly, I hope there will be changes in the way you think. There should be a shift in our thinking. What is dualism? That's the next slide. Brian J. Walsh and Richard Middleton J. described dualism as, dualism is a split vision worldview. It separates reality into two fundamentally distinct categories, holy and profane, sacred and secular. Now you got it. Holy and profane, sacred and secular. Very often we use this word. Do you work in a secular world or secular job? My wife is in a secular job, sinful job. I'm in a sacred job, pastor. Dualistic thinking. You see? I should consider her calling as equally holy as my calling. There's nothing that mine is more holier than her calling. But many people, when we don't understand this, they think that I'm just in the secular world. You know, I can just mess around there. But you are a pastor. Behave yourself. Right? Let's break down this thinking. This fragmented vision of spiritual things and secular things or worldly things should be broken down in our thinking. So many a times people categorize these sacred things as reading the Bible, praying, worshiping, and some spiritual activities as the whole sacred thing. And the rest of other activities are worldly things or secular things. That means a small fraction of time in a day we are engaged in a sacred thing. Some people don't even engage in a day. They don't even care to pray or read the word. That means mostly your thinking is secularly thinking, worldly thinking. And that needs to be broken down. We don't realize that eating or the choice of your drinks or going to office, going to market, everything is holy. We don't consider that. And that is why we carelessly do anything. And that's what the Bible is saying. The life is not about eating and drinking. It's much more than that. But eating and drinking is important when we understand that these are also holy activities. We need to understand that. So dualism is that division between the secular and the sacred. Now, what is wrong with dualism? What is wrong with this? In the Eden Garden, there was no sin. In the Eden Garden, Adam and Eve were living there, and they were having this perfect relationship with God, and there was no sin in that garden. Unfortunately, they sin against God, and sin starts to work in that atmosphere, and sin entered into the world, and the sin of Adam and Eve permeated into every sphere of life. It goes into every sphere of life. It is a sad story, but that was not the end of the story, because Jesus came. He came, and he came for the redemptive work of every sphere of life. Because of Adam's sin, sin permeates into all the spheres of life. But because of Jesus Christ, his redemptive work permeates into all walks of life again. And that is why the Bible says in Romans chapter 8, verse 20 to 21, it says, "For the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in the hope that the creation itself will be liberated or be freed from its bondage to decay." Most of this creation are in bondage to be decayed and brought into the freedom and glory to the children of God. It sounds a little complicated, I must say this, but in a simple words, it is like this. The children of God will help the creation liberated from the bondages that are facing or going towards decay. So you and I, children of God, we have the responsibility of redeeming the things of this world. Every sphere of this society, we as children, we have this mandate to liberate and redeem this world, the world that you are in. And that's why dualistic view of reality comes in the way of redeeming the whole creation. It comes in the way because if I'm the only pastor here, now if I'm the only one in this church thinking of redeeming the society, how pathetic that is. Because let's say, for example, all of our church members, they don't have this kind of wholesome thinking or holistic thinking, that they only think of secular work, secular jobs, and not thinking of redeeming the sphere that God has placed them. So in their mind, there is no way they are working for the glory of God to redeem the spheres that they are in. So this dualistic thinking comes in the way of redeeming where you are placed. To give you an example, let's say Rita was actively working these few weeks because of Joel, who was hospitalized. And she is working hard there to redeem the health industry by giving a small contribution of hers, by reaching out to the sick people with all of her heart, with her faith, praying for Joel, attending him. So there is a mix of good works and faith works. Preaching the gospel, praying for him, and reaching out to him. That is how we play a part in redeeming our industry or the sphere that we are placed in. Now, our church is registered in the government as Redeeming Community Ministries. Redeeming Community Ministries. So, we want to redeem the community where we are in. That is basically Dwarka. That's why we say Dwarka Community Church. We want to redeem this community in whatever way we can. Now, so for example, we started a music school. And the name of the music school is Redeeming Music School. Why do we say that? Because music, in its original form, was used for worshiping God. Music was meant to worship God. But at this point of time, how people are using this music? Mostly to worship devil and man and self. And thus has polluted the original purpose of the music. And that is why you and I, let's say the musicians like Abhishek and the whole worship team, our thinking should be constantly about how do we redeem this original purpose of the music, rather than just conforming with the world and use this music for anything and everybody, and sometimes for yourself, to promote yourself. How wrong was that? we are supposed to redeem where God has placed us. This has to come and internalize in our lives. Now, where do we find dualism in the church? Do we find dualism in the church? Yes, we do. Yes. Now, very often with a well-meaning questions like, are you a full-time worker? Right? It's okay. I mean, just to clarify, they are saying, are you a full-time worker? That means, are you not taking up any job apart from what you're doing in the church? This is the million questions that I get from people. Whenever I introduce, I'm Ramkhaning, I work for the church, then they say, do you work full-time for the church or part-time for the church? So the answer will be simple, yes, I'm a full-time worker. But in my thinking, are you not a full-time worker then? What are you? Part-time follower of Jesus Christ? We are all full-time followers of Jesus Christ, and we all work fully for Jesus Christ. It is just that the church has a need to employ man or employ a full-time person here. That is why they started giving me salary. But otherwise, all of us are full-time workers of Jesus Christ. Okay? So now we have bivocational pastors. Bivocational. They are working outside the church and they are also the pastor of the church. In GMI setup, 80% of the pastors are bivocational pastors, and a great applause to them. I really appreciate them for their hard work. They go for work for 10 hours, 8 hours, and then they come back home and work for the church, and so much of sacrifice. Now, there are many sincere pastors, bivocational pastors, but there are also bivocational pastors who has this mindset of thinking that I am only a part-time worker in the church. I'm only a part-time pastor in the church. And what happened is that when there is no fruitfulness in that church, he has a shadow to hide in and say that I'm just a part-time pastor. And hence there is less fruit. And that's okay because I'm just a part-time worker. And now bringing home here in the church, only one person full-time employee. The rest of you are volunteers. Church is run by volunteers. And now, suppose today in the morning, 2 people were outside greeting people. Java and, where is Java? Heka, I'm looking at Heka and saying Java. Heka and Dinpa. Dinpa, I can't see you. Okay, so they were wearing these warm clothes, covering themselves, and then shaking hands and say, thank you for coming, good morning, everything. And now, suppose after the worship service, I ask them, so what do you do in the church? I'm just an usher. I'm just an usher. Just an usher. Not a full-time worker like you. No, there is no just an usher or just a volunteer. Every one of us shares equal responsibility in the church. Everyone is equally important in the church. So never have this attitude thinking that I'm just a cell leader. I'm just there operating something behind the scene. I'm just a PPT maker like Priscilla. No, beautiful, made by Priscilla. Everything that we do here in the church are equally important. So we should never have this attitude that I'm just an ordinary volunteer. No. If we consider ourselves as just a volunteer trying to fill in some gap here and there, then our fruitfulness will be hampered. If you have that full ownership and say that this is my church, this is the church that God has called me, and I will give my 100% to this, then your fruitfulness will follow you all the days of your life. So my conclusion is that fruitfulness in any ministry is not about how much time you have or how much talent you have or how much anointing you have, but it's a matter of heart. How committed you are. Your heart matters. Your heart matters. 2 Chronicles chapter 16 verse 9 says, "For the eyes of the Lord range throughout the four corners of the world to strengthen whose hearts are fully committed to Him." So it is a matter of heart. It's not about other things. It's fully committed to Him. The heart is fully committed to God. Now, just to bring home the point, let me give you an example. I see Mayori. Mayori, where are you? Okay. So Mayori is there. Many, many years ago, before I moved here to Delhi, before I even got married, while I was a single, our church, Bombay Baptist Church, asked me to start a cell group in my rented small apartment. And so, in obedience to the pastor, I started a cell group. And I think Mayori was there. And her friend and some people were there, some boys and girls. We all gathered together and we started a Bible school, Bible study. Very soon, my small apartment became crowded. So with advice from the pastor, we split into two. And the cell continued to grow and continued to have so many people that the pastor said, "Why don't you launch a church?" And so we started a church out of those two cell groups. I was not a pastor. A couple came from BBC and they became the pastor. I was just supporting them. Now, in this scenario, I was working in a secular world, in your language. I was working in a secular world called Maersk Sealand as an auditor. So that's a full-time job. And in Mumbai, if you think that Delhi is busy and fast, that is much more faster. They work for 10 hours like normal. And they travel 1.5 hours one way as normal. I was doing that. So 3 hours of travel is a normal thing for a Bombayers. And 10 hours in the office. So how many hours left? They just go home to sleep and go back straight to the work again. And in that scenario, I was running a cell group. And it was multiplying. It was fruitful. It is not a matter of working in a secular work. But it's a matter of heart. It's a matter of commitment. Then God gave me a calling. Then I started calling myself I'm called. So I was called into the ministry. So we moved as a family, we moved here. So I became a full-time pastor. So full-time pastor, I was not doing anything, but you'll be surprised that I was actually running a school right here in Amberhai. A secular, again, I will use your word, a secular school running here, pre-primary school, 6 teachers, 4 classrooms. I was the principal come chowkidar. And so at times I wonder whether I'm a full-time pastor or a full-time chowkidar. I was doing both this. It's not so easy. As a principal, I will advertise it, insert our pamphlets early in the morning at 5 a.m. at Sector 10 so many times about our school. I will go there, insert it myself with other boys, give them money. I do that every morning to make our school grow. And I was surprised that there are more candidates for the teachers than the students. So I had to recruit the teachers, interviews after interviews, and with much difficulty I recruit them, some teachers. And then students were coming in. And so seems like a lot of work. But on the other hand, our church was also growing, and we overgrew in our living room. So what I'm trying to say is, within 2 years, we were independent financially. Our church could give me salary from the income that we have. And we moved to the school and started this worship in the school. my point here is, it is a matter of heart when it comes to fruitfulness in our ministry. Never hide in the shadow of being a part-time, being a volunteer. Oh, I'm working outside, I'm not doing fully here, I'm not a full-time. No. It's all a wrong thinking. This is called dualism. And we need to break down this dualistic thinking. And so if we look at Ephesians chapter 4, verse 11 and 12, it says, Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, and teachers to equip his people for works of service so that the body of Christ may be built up. So it is more to do with the gifts than the higher calling. This fivefold ministry that is listed here, it's not about, they don't have that higher calling. It's about gifts. And sometimes that's why, when people say like the apostle so-and-so, prophet so-and-so, evangelist so-and-so, pastor so-and-so, it is actually not right. It is a gift. I have this small measure of gifts in pastoral care that I was called into this. I don't have a great measure of pastoral care or pastoral gifts. So it's about gifts. Now, in our church, there are eight cell leaders, couples, mostly, and Auntie Shila is there. They are all pastors. They are doing the work of pastors. This is truly pastoral work. So, I am the team leader of all these pastors in the church. So I would prefer to be, one day if our church grows and we have 2-3 pastors here, I would prefer to be called as the team leader than the senior pastor or whatever that they say. It's just a leader of the team, just leading the team. That's it. We all have the equal importance in the role, pastoral role. And so we have different gifts in the church that we need to celebrate. I'm gifted in evangelism. I need to celebrate that. I'm gifted prophetically. I need to celebrate that. We all need to celebrate how God has called us. So all the professions are holy. All the callings are holy calling. And that's why sometimes people think that being a pastor, you are in a protective environment. And they think that I am not prone to sin as much as they are prone to sinning. Yeah? Many times you think that you're always with the pastors and Christian leaders or Christian people and Christian friends, so you are protected. I don't think so. I think you are more protected. In your case, because of this dualistic thinking, you have no fear in hiring and firing people, is it not? In your workplace, you have no fear in speaking roughly with people, fighting with people, conflicts in the workplace. You don't care because your mindset is different there. You have a different face altogether in the workplace. You wear a different mask on Sunday. That's a sacred mask. You put it on Sunday morning and you come here. So all of us behave Christianly. Brother, sister, how are you? You hug them, even though you don't like to hug them, and just say, God bless you, brother. In the workplace, you are a different man altogether. A fiery furnace. You hire and fire people like anything. So it seems like you are much more easier there. For me, I have to be graceful with everybody. But let me tell you, I'm graceful if I am. It is not because of the fear of man. It is I am trying to display the character of God, character of Jesus Christ. And isn't that a calling for every one of us? We are supposed to be graceful to everybody, inside the church, outside the church. I used to work for indiainfoline.com as a sales manager in one branch. And those days, we go to some homes of high net worth individuals. And in one of these visits, we go to a very high individual investor with my boss. And when we went there and spoke to her, she's a very, very rich person. And she said to my boss, I found your man very graceful in his talk. He's always graceful in his talk. And my boss was very happy. Now, I'm telling you this because in the sales department, languages are not so graceful. Do you agree with me? Sales team. In the sales, you call your clients. The moment you keep down your phone, the language that comes out from the mouth is a different language altogether. I know that. I know the atmosphere. But I will not do that. I will not do that. In my branch, nobody should curse and swear. I said, no, this is not wrong. This is not right. We should not do that. Think about yourself as that investor. They have their own problems. Instead of cursing, we should bless them. So some kind of change in that atmosphere because you are there. And those people who often swear, they will not swear because I am there. Be an influence, a positive influence in where God has placed you instead of conforming to the pattern of this world. So how will dualism affect your life? That's the next point. And the verse for that is, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. So compartmentalization of life will not be there. So we will not compartmentalize our activities in our lives, but we will look at our life as the whole life. Everything is important in the sight of God. Everything is important in the sight of God. So if we do that, this will not affect our life, our dualistic thinking. Moving on to the last point, and that is how to remove dualistic thinking. And the Bible verse for us for removing the dualistic thinking is this. In 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 9 it says, but you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of Him who called you out of darkness into His wonderful light. Think about the creation, the first creation when Adam and Eve were there in the Eden garden. Okay? And then let's imagine that they never sinned against God. They did not disobey God. So they continue with that perfect relationship with God. So they multiply into families, and it becomes village, and it becomes city, town, and cities, and it is just multiplying. Now, in that scenario, or just take, for example, the family of Adam and Eve. They will have children. And all the children cannot be pastors, obviously. I don't think there is a church in that place. But everyone is doing things that are necessary for their life. Some people will go and plow the field. Some people will go to the apple orchard, let's say. Some people will take care of cattle. At the end of the day, when they come home, Adam, the father of the family, will not say, Abel, what you're doing is so secular, looking after the apple and orchards, so secular. Cain, you're looking after some people. I think that's a holy calling. That's good. Do you think he will say that? I don't think so. There is no concept of sacred and secular in that scenario. In that family, everything is ordained by God, and every activity is celebrated by the family and by God. And that's exactly what Jesus wants to do when He came here on earth, to redeem every sphere of life, that every sphere of life will become holy unto the sight of God. And if we have this thinking, then we will work in a different mindset altogether. So that each work of a man or a woman is an act of worship. The Christians has been culture followers rather than culture formers. And because of this dualistic thinking. If a musician has this wholesome thinking and not dualistic thinking, he will be a trendsetter in that place. But many of the Christians are not trendsetters, but they are conformers. And that's the sad story. So we need to shift our thinking. We need to shift our thinking. When I was, again, called into the full-time worker, I went and met the general manager and spoke to her about my going out. And she was saying, why do you want to go out? And I said, I have this calling from God to be in His service. And she was taken aback and said, whoa, calling from God. I wish God will call me also. And I would have said that if I knew about dualistic thinking. I would have said, ma'am, you are called to be the general manager in this place and shine wherever you are. But I stepped back and said, yes, I have this calling, so I need to leave this world. Leave this work and then go into this sacred service, like secret service. It's a dualistic thinking. It's like, I'm leaving this world and now I'm going to the sacred service. No! Everything is same. It's just a matter of seasons. In different seasons, people are called in different places and different callings. So calling will not mean that always in that throughout your life. You can be called for some time here. You can be called in some time there. Pastor Nguiza, he was called as a businessman, then he was called back as a pastor, then he was called back again into the business. So now he's the overseer in African continents of the networks of Salt and Light Ministries. So you can be called in different seasons of your life in different professions. All right? I think some time back, Romy was called into the church to be part of the staff here. Now she's called back in the professions that she was good at. And that is perfectly fine. But we always need to say, I am called now here. And I need to shine and bloom and flourish in this calling that God has called me right now. And now, there is this cultural mountains. There are 7 cultural mountains that the theologians have divided. They said that this cultural mountains kind of covers almost all the activities that we do as human beings. So number 1 is religion, and that's what the church is doing. Yeah? We are trying to redeem this religious culture or religious mountain. And the second one is the government. I know that many of you or some of you works for government. And then family. So when we do our, couples, marriage course, parenting course, these are all trying our bit to redeem the family mountain. Then business, most of you are in business, and then some of you are teachers, education. So when you teach, you have to redeem that education mountain. And then media, arts and entertainment. Arts and entertainment, I would really love some of our church members to become a great Bollywood actor or Bollywood actress. Just think about it. We have Johnny Lever representing us, but think about a really, really superstar, as they call it, a committed Christian superstar. How he's going to change that industry. Think about it. He can change it and redeem this art and entertainment. They are so influential. They are so influential because people are willing to look at them when they are coughing. Even that is also so precious for people. So influential. Is it not? All those unnecessary Instagram posting that they have, they're all useless. But million views. Whoa, million views. And imagine if this guy becomes a real follower of Christ, how he can bring changes into that industry. And so I'm praying that some of us will become Bollywood actors and actresses. To conclude this, from Genesis chapter 1 verse 28, God blessed them, Adam and Eve, and said to them, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. That's a mandate for every one of us, to fill this earth, subdue it, and rule with a godly rule, with a Christ-like character. We need to redeem it. We need to subdue it. So every one of us, we are called into a holy calling. Our professions are holy, and God is pleased with all of us. And I pray that all of us will work in such a way that we will bring changes in our company policies, because we have such wisdom from above that your boss will come and ask you, what should we do about this? And you will give a godly counsel. Like Daniel, think about it, like Nehemiah, they give those godly counsel to the kings. And you will give godly counsel and thus bring changes in the company policy. So that's my prayer this morning. God bless you. Thank you so much.